So this is kind of a lie. I've actually played 3 Battle Royales, and I figured it's that time of year where we radically change the channel, so why not review the 3 Battle Royales I've played. Now, the ratings I'm going to give them is based on other Battle Royales, which might be a problem. I think it'll be fine though. First one I ever played was Totally Accurate Battlegrounds. That one's okay. There's kind of like these walls that drop down instead of like a ring of just damage, which I think is really, really interesting. Its arsenal is incredibly varied. It's a lot of like older stuff and a couple newer things too. But the biggest things holding it back are the movement and the gunplay, because it uses landfall's weird signature, everything's a physics object manipulation. So yeah, I have to give that like a C. All of its goods outweigh its bads. The next one I played was the winter or early spring of 2019. That was Apex Legends for the April Fool's Day video. I have no new footage of it. It's all just that old footage people complain about. The idea of doing a character-based Battle Royale is neat, but I think the issue with doing a character-based Battle Royale is some characters will just be better than others. And it sure seems like that's the case with Apex. Also, I don't like the Titanfall world, but the things I liked about the Titanfall world, like the wall running and the parkour, have been not gutted, but like nerfed. Sucks. It's like a D. And that's not even like the bad experience talking, because the next one I played was Fortnite. And I actually played that one more recently than you think. I actually first played it in May of 2019 for a class, Business of Games. I played 2 matches, and I've played 2 more since. And in fact, the footage you're looking at is probably newer than the footage in Games as a Social Space, implying I've played a third. The actual building mechanics are very watered down, but I think that works in the game's favor, because you can quickly just like press 2 buttons and build like a wall to protect you, and then press 2 more buttons and you're back to having your gun out. The weapons aren't great. They're very clearly based on real-world weapons, but they lack variety. Or, they lack, not variety. Well, they do, because they take a bunch of weapons out every season. But, they just don't feel like the weapons they're supposed to be. Part of me wishes the weapons were a bit less stylized, but I think that's just the game's crappy art style. Its movement is fine. The fact that it's third person is fine. I usually don't like third person cameras, but this one feels okay. So this might surprise you, but I have to give it a B. Again, compared to other Battle Royales. If we compare Fortnite to Halo 2, a game I only started playing, yeah, I would much rather play Halo 2. Truth be told, unlike our FPS tier list that I did in the Titanfall video, where I gave Titanfall 2 a C, and I still think it kind of fits there, alongside Quake and Borderlands 3. You know, fine games. Fortnite's like at the very bottom of C. And D is home to the likes of the other 2 Battle Royales and Halo 1 and Blue Shift. Is that controversial? That might be controversial. Simply put, I think Battle Royales just aren't for me. And while I'm in a game development field, I have a degree in game development, I do need to, see what people are doing, so I had to play these. And that's the end of this video. But there's so much time left. We need something to do. Welcome to an Unplugged review of the Doom Eternal DLC while I unbox some Pokemon cards. So I just want to start off by talking about Doom Eternal. I think it's a fine game. I would give it like a 7 out of 10. I do think it's got some issues. A lot of them stem from the fact that, well, I feel like the game doesn't do a fantastic job explaining its plot. I feel like some of its combat encounters are a bit bland or uninspired, and I feel like its soundtrack is just okay. How do I open this? But again, like, you know, it's probably my favorite AAA FPS at the moment. It's like a 7 out of 10. My next favorite is probably definitely older. I couldn't tell you which one right now. I don't know why we have a second Panda Bear in Pokemon, but we do. We already had Pancham. I don't think we needed Urshifu. Anyways, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Pokemon. Who are you gonna vote for? Barack Obama. Let's get opening. Let's start by talking about Ancient Gods Part 1, because I feel like that is the easiest place to start. Ancient Gods Part 1 takes place pretty much immediately after Doom Eternal's base game, and it starts in a level called the UAC Atlantica facility, which is like an oil rig kind of building. It's very interesting. Like, the setting is just kind of cool. You know, you destroy the oil rig, which is fun. Combat encounters all throughout Ancient Gods Part 1 are very difficult. You know, way harder than the base game, and some people like that. You know, James Cameron, he's an animator for something. He animated Hat in Time's DLC. He really liked the added difficulty. I think the issue with the added difficulty is it makes the game difficult for... I'm going to move these over here. It makes the game difficult for console players and people who, you know, just aren't very good at video games. Meaning that if you buy that, you're locked out of a whole bunch of content. And that is kind of an issue. I feel like it could be more balanced. And I feel Ancient Gods Part 2 does a better job, but we're talking about Part 1 at the moment. And Ancient Gods Part 1 is very difficult. And I feel like difficulty isn't necessarily good. Like, it's not a sign of, you know, it doesn't make the game better. But I feel like its combat environments, like combat encounters, are more suited for the enemies you get thrown at you. Just their biggest issue is they go on forever, and resources are scarce. You know, I play the game on Ultra Violence, so Ultra Violence is kind of like Nightmare in the base game, like Ultra Violence in the DLC. And it's pretty much like that for all the other DLCs. Like, Hurt Me Punny feels like Ultra Violence. Nightmare feels like some sort of horrid, more difficult... not Ultra Nightmare, but like Super Nightmare mode. And I feel like a lot of people would actually like that. I'm personally not a fan. The environments in the game are alright. UAC Atlantica is very much like Doom 2016, which I feel is kind of a cool callback for people who liked that game. I'm not particularly fond of Doom 2016, but I still think it's a neat environment. Blood Swamps is not very fun. There's like these combat encounters where the arena gets really small. Those are neat, but that's really it. You're gonna have to watch this video like 3 times to see what I get and what I'm talking about and everything. That's awesome. What is this? 7:53, so that had to be Sun and Moon. Okay. Right. Blood Swamps has cool combat encounters, but the environment isn't very fun. And then you get to the Holt, which is a really cool environment. And you get to talk to the Father, who's kind of like the god of the Doom world. It's just really cool to kind of get that glimpse into, you know, the kind of the bigger world of Doom. And the Father is voiced by Andre Soglioso, who you might know on this channel, because he's in a game that we've played on this channel a whole bunch way long ago. That's right, he was Scarface in Scarface The World Is Yours on the PS2. Anyways, here's Chimecho. But the Holt is really cool. The enemies, actually, in Ancient Gods Part 1, are a lot of fun with one exception, the Spirit. The Spirit is like a buff totem for a single demon, but when you kill it, you have to microwave the Spirit with the microwave beam, otherwise it just takes over another enemy. It has to be the microwave beam attachment for the plasma rifle, nothing else, and I really, really hate that. I hate when a combat encounter has only a single way out. I feel like Doom Eternal works best when you have options, but it's up to you to make the smartest option. You can still use a stupider option, but you're going to be there for a while. You want to, minigun down the Marauder? Go ahead. It's your funeral. Whereas you really don't get that with the Spirit. It feels like every game that has a thing called Spirits sucks, which I hate. The final boss in Ancient Gods Part 1 is also a pain in the ass because they summon spirit-buffed versions of like Pain Elementals and Hell Knights. It's just not fun. That combat encounter is just a pain in the ass, and I feel like it doesn't need to be. The environment is kind of neat, though. Although you do spend a whole lot of time kind of circling around, grinding for health and ammo, which, I'm a bit frustrated with. I feel like the game works best when it keeps up the pace. But Ancient Gods Part 1 is fine. But Ancient Gods Part 2, I feel like the combat encounters in Ancient Gods Part 2 aren't as good. And I feel like what that kind of boils down to is they don't feel like they fit the environment you fight them in. There's a place where you put on a rad suit and you go into this big pit of nukage. First of all, I did not even notice the rad suit was there, so I had to just keep jumping around to avoid taking damage. I guess that one's on me, but it at least made that arena more fun. But going back with the rad suit, it's kind of just a couple enemies. There's also a place off the beaten path where you get BFG ammo, but then you just have to fight 2 Mancubuses, which I blood punched, and they died. So that wasn't particularly interesting. I will say that the arenas in Ancient Gods Part 2, like the actual maps, are really nice to look at. An arena kind of like that second level with like the big arena where you get the dash and the blood punch. That might not be the second level, that might be the third. But like wherever you get the dash, that area you kind of go back to. There's the Reclaimed Earth, which for, being a post-apoc, like, humanity's gone map, and nature's reclaimed, it feels very hopeful because you really don't see a lot of nature on Earth in the base game. And then there is Emora. And Emora is kind of like the most ancient part of Hell. Emora's got a cool cutscene going into it, but other than that, it's a very straightforward, kind of boring level, which is a disappointment, because all the other levels are super cool. Reclaimed Earth has some breathtaking views. That first level is very gorgeous, but all 3 of the levels kind of have the same issue where the actual combat encounters just aren't fun or interesting, which is really kind of a disappointment. I really feel like Doom Eternal Ancient Gods Part 1 had better combat encounters, but they were too difficult. Ancient Gods Part 2, first of all, nerfs Ancient Gods Part 1. It's actually now easier. But its combat encounters are a lot like this. They're very ugly and ill-formed. I feel like the difficulty for Ancient Gods Part 1 for like consoles and lower difficulties now is fine, but for like Nightmare, I feel like the difficulty it was is really the difficulty it could have stayed at. And then Ancient Gods Part 2 is by comparison easier. There are new enemies in Ancient Gods Part 2. There's also another guy in Ancient Gods Part 1. There's like turrets or columns where eyes pop out and you have to shoot the eyes. Those are okay, but they're kind of frustrating to fight just because you have to wait. But there's also like almost like a Marauder version of a Maker drone, which is super interesting. But the issue with that is they make a shing noise when you can pop their head off. But they make the same shing noise as the Marauder, which is frustrating. I wish they had 2 different sounds, or 3, because there's, no, just 2, because I was about to say, there's another instance of somebody who makes a shing noise when you could fight them, but I'm thinking, the true final boss. Okay, I just realized that what I was supposed to be talking about here, where I'm talking about the Shings and the Dark Lord and the Marauder and that Maker enemy, is there's a new enemy called the Armored Baron, and it's a Baron of Hell that wears like cyber armor. And when he charges up his punch, he makes a shing noise, and if you shoot his arm, all of his armor breaks off and you can attack him. It's a really good enemy, but the fact that it makes the same shing noise that the Marauder and the Maker enemy make bothers me a lot. I feel like they should be 3 distinct sounds. I do like the fact that it is a high-pitched shing noise, but maybe like 2 other similar sounds for the 2 other enemies. That is a bother. There are these things called Escalation Nests or Escalation Encounters. Those are super cool because you only have to do the first one, which is about the difficulty of the base game. But then there's a second one you can do for cosmetic bonuses. And those second ones are way more difficult. They're more in line with like Ancient Gods Part 1 or the Master levels. And they're super fun once you get into the groove, which I think is really neat. They are some of the best combat encounters and some of the best like side challenges in Doom Eternal. Which is, I mean, sort of a shame, but also at the same time, kind of to be expected. I don't know, it feels like a missed opportunity. I wanted more encounters like that, but I guess that's all water under the bridge. Let's talk about the final boss. I'm going to try to avoid spoilers, but it's going to be difficult to do because, surprise, you're fighting the Dark Lord, Devoth. He's like the Satan. He's, you know, he made everything that's evil and corrupt. And he, I was hoping for like, because he's got a very, very similar build to the Slayer. So I was hoping it'd be more like, almost like a deathmatch, like duel. Like, you know, you're both on equal grounds. But it's not. That looks like the Cubs logo, just from a distance, like the color scheme. It's not. It's nothing like, you know, a duel or anything of the sort. He's in big clunking armor with a shield, and when he's ready to be attacked, he makes a shing. So you fight the Dark Lord. He's got this big kind of sawed-off power armor, and a big sword, and a big shield. And you can only attack him when he makes a shing noise. And when you shoot him, he gets stunned. And then you're supposed to pull out the new weapon, the Sentinel Hammer, which I like. It kind of fixes the problem that I have with the Crucible. The Crucible is just the chainsaw, but only 1 use per enemy, and you don't get anything for using it. The Sentinel Hammer is kind of like a good counterpart to the chainsaw, because instead of killing a single enemy and getting a whole bunch of ammo, it stuns a ton of enemies. And then you get a whole bunch of ammo. So you kind of use them differently. I kind of wish you could bring it to the base game. I really wish there was a cheat code to do that. There is not a cheat code for that. And it feels like something that'd be relatively simple to implement. Hugo, I know you watch the videos that fans put out. I don't know if you'll watch this one because it's labeled wrong. But please consider. And if someone please pass that message on, because I'd really love to use a Sentinel Hammer in the base game. But you swing the hammer at the Dark Lord to prolong the stun, and then you kind of just pump super shotgun and ballista rounds into him until you have to do it again. The issue is if you hit his shield, or you take damage, he restores whack loads of health. And it's frankly disgusting. You know, entire sub-phases of a phase of that boss can be undone if you just happen to shoot wrong or, you know, take damage. You're not in the right place at the right time, which is irritating. It is legitimately, absolutely infuriating. And it's one of those things that I feel, it doesn't make the boss fight more fun. It just makes it drag on longer. Like, significantly longer. And it doesn't need to be that way. Especially because the actual fighting isn't interesting. It's a very, very boring boss fight. It's like the Con Maker, but worse. And then you defeat the boss, and you're told, oh, this is gonna be a spoiler. I'm sorry. You might want to skip ahead like 15 seconds. You're told that because the Dark Lord created you, you have to die as well. And the last cutscene of the game is like a candlelight funeral for the Doomslayer. And it's just... it's like a cop-out. Not really a cop-out, but it's a very underwhelming end to Doom Eternal. But it's also a fitting end, because there's nothing left for the Doomslayer to do but fight demons. And if there's no more demons left, then what are you going to do? Things need to end. I wish there was something more. I feel like Ancient Gods Part 2 has better environments, but it's overall weaker than Ancient Gods Part 1. It has, like, no story. It's all just a build-up to the Dark Lord. And the fight itself isn't fun or interesting. It's very boring. And boy, oh boy, I'm not a fan. I feel like it could have been so much more. And the fact that it isn't is disheartening. But at the same time, I feel like now Doom Eternal is kind of a complete package. Because there's now, like, what, 16 or 17 levels? And if Ancient Gods Part 1 is now in line with difficulty from, like, Final Sin up to Ancient Gods Part 2, it is radically better and, like, more balanced. Though I feel like Nightmare on the whole kind of needs a rework, because it's kind of just more damage, more demons. I feel like the combat encounters could be better, especially in Ancient Gods Part 2. I'm not saying Final Sin had great combat encounters either. All of these cards are messed up because they're from 2006 and I didn't know how to take care of them. I'm sorry. But I feel like ditto these. Like, the next, like, 4 pages are all going to be ruined and chewed up and waterlogged. Sorry. But I feel like the combat encounters kind of build up and then tail off with how the game is kind of designed now as like a whole coherent package. And some people might like kind of the raw, like, burrs around the edges. I do feel like it kind of makes a game feel more, not complete, but it makes a game feel more alive. You know, if a game's, like, super focus tested and, you know, designed, like, to hell and back, you feel it. And when a game is just kind of, like, oh, that level wasn't very great, but that level was awesome, you know, you can appreciate the cool levels more. Like, Arc Complex is still amazing, and it's kind of because the rest of the game is so bland. I didn't even talk about the other enemies in Ancient Gods Part 2. Okay. Where do I begin? Okay. Heavy Weapon Dude is back. He has a shield that you can't destroy the shield, and he fires a whole bunch of bullets very quickly. But if you just lob a grenade underneath him, you can take care of him, no problem. Very nice to see Heavy Weapon Dude back. There is another new enemy, the Stone Imp. The Stone Imp. And it's just an imp that has a whole lot more health, but it takes a whole bunch more damage from the auto shotgun. But you can still fight it with, you know, grenades and the super shotgun and the ballista. And you can even just chainsaw it for a single pip of fuel. And that's kind of what I'm talking about with the Spirit. You know, it makes more sense to use the auto shotgun on the Stone Imp. But if you don't have access to that, you can make do with whatever else you have. Whereas the Spirit, you need the microwave rifle. And on that note, Cursed Prowler is, like, the single worst thing in Doom Eternal, even more than the Spirit. When the Cursed Prowler hits you, you lose a bunch of abilities. These are all the, like, the evolutions of the Generations cards. These are reprints. They're not the originals. Originals had red text, and they didn't have the little basic diamond. Anyways, and that's a little different. And this stuff down here is different. Just thought I'd let you know. It's still cool. But the Cursed Prowler, you can't do certain things. I don't think you can chainsaw, or maybe you can chainsaw. There's certain things you can't do when you've been cursed by a Cursed Prowler. And one of those is kill the Cursed Prowler with anything but a Blood Punch. You need a Blood Punch to kill the Cursed Prowler. All the while, you're taking like 5 or 10 DPS just from being cursed. If you don't have a Blood Punch already, you're screwed. But if you find the Cursed Prowler, keep your distance, you can then, like, meat hook in and destroy it. I feel like the Cursed Prowler should have been like a Klepto or Yukiki in Mario, where they steal Doom Guy's hat. No, where they kind of take away some of your abilities and you take more damage from enemy sources when you've been cursed, but you're not just taking weird damage all the time. And you have to kill the cursed Prowler to get uncursed, but the cursed Prowler loves to run and hide, so you have to kind of like corner it. I feel like that would have been a much more smart design, because it kind of encourages smarter play. You know, it's not just, oh, I was cursed, now I have to go track down this thing and blood punch it. No, now it's more like, oh, you know, now I have to be more careful. Let's go find that guy, but make sure I don't take a whole bunch of unnecessary damage. Maybe I'll pull out, you know, micro missiles or the big like blades on the ballista, so that way I can tear down a whole bunch of enemies in front of me without worrying about taking a whole bunch of unnecessary damage. Again, cards from 06. All the newer cards I take way better care of because they all kind of just sit in this book I've had since 2015. The Cursed Prowler kind of just needs to be better, and it isn't better, and that is an issue. Ultimately, what it comes down to is I feel that Ancient Gods is a good complement to Doom Eternal, in that they're all three pieces of the puzzle are so blisteringly okay that I mean, I've done all this like talking about it, but I can't tell you whether you should play it or not. Because if you've played Doom Eternal, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. If you love Doom Eternal's like world and story and combat encounters, you'll love this. But if you play Doom Eternal on like super high difficulty or like super high, like you have a super high skill level, you're probably not going to want to play it because it's very overwhelmingly mediocre. The environments are lovely. They are some of the coolest environments in a Doom game ever. But at the same time, you know, combat encounters just aren't very fun. The difficulty is kind of all over the place, even after the nerf to Ancient Gods Part 1. It's all okay. It's all okay. Thank you for watching my April Fool's video. That was like 3 videos in one. We talked about Battle Royales for like 4 minutes. And then you got to see my card collection and me open up a whole bunch of new packs. A set that is very difficult to come by, I think. I don't know if, what is this one called? Battle Styles? I don't know if Sword and Shield Battle Styles is any easier to get than the last Sword and Shield set. But if it's not, you just got to see me open up a whole bunch of cards and just put them kind of haphazardly in a big binder. If you're a collector and that made you upset, I am sorry. Also, if you hate when I review Doom things, because I always get like between like 40 and 70% like ratios as opposed to like 80 or 90, well, you're in luck, because there's nothing left for me to review about Doom now, is there? If you like this video and you'd like to see more, I'd recommend subscribing. Patreon and social media links are in the description.